Right. Yeah, let's just bitch.
Bitch about what? What's on your mind? What's
Sure.
grinding? Remember Family Guy
Yeah,
grinding my
grind my
gears?
gears.
Yeah. What's grinding your gears, Kevin? There's always something
Um,
grinding your gears.
yeah, I'm always happy. Yeah, shoulder season's here. We just had a big storm pass through up in North Florida. I talked to Patrick Coughlin earlier today, and it's hitting South Carolina right now. Yeah, it's just kind of like slow after spring break and not a whole lot going on and crappy weather, and it's never conducive for water sports.
Mm. How was
Yeah.
uh how was spring break as a whole?
Eh, spring break broke. It was pretty good. You know,
Yeah.
it was like stopped a little bit of the bloodletting that we do in the off season, and yeah, Greg and I were kind of waxing on that earlier, talking about it is, and I think if you listen to the show at all, like you probably I think everybody works for July in this business,
Yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
even if you're in a place where it's warm, Christmas or Thanksgiving, like you're probably still not operating at a net positive.
Yeah. What
Um,
percent of your revenue is quarter one?
uh,
10%?
uh,
Like your overall revenue?
yeah, yeah, it's like less than 10%.
Yeah. We're like 7.5%, 8% of our total revenue is
Yeah,
I mean it's gonna change based on where you're from. If you're South Florida, that's probably, probably 25%. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Everyone gets really frustrated because spring break sucks. And the reality is that it doesn't matter for a lot of us. It's just a little blip. And the Super Bowl is May, June, July, August, or I should
the
say
Super
June,
Bowl's
July.
July. Yeah, if you
Yeah.
look at if you really look at July's revenue, like it is such a massive amount of your total. Like if you look at it as like July as a part of the overall summer from May to end of August,
Mhm.
it's ridiculous. I can't even. I think for us it's something like 60%. And when you talk to water sport operators, like historically, a lot of them in are bad moods. Like 10 months out of the year.
Yeah. Everyone's in a
Yeah.
good mood in September. That's
Oh
the
yeah.
best mood everyone is at because it's slowed down a little bit for most of us. They have cash in the bank and it's like they can relax a little bit. If you had a
Yeah.
bad summer, then September can be really shitty because then you're like, oh God, it sucked. And now I'm going into cash burn season. But yeah, I
I,
mean, it's easy to get really bent out of shape about spring break. And I think looking back at, like, we predicted 2024 to be similar to 2023. I would say that we were pretty on point because most of the operators I spoke to were either about the same, either they were up or down single digits. A couple people were down, way down, but if you are very, very weather dependent, then you're probably way down because we did have some pretty shitty weather. And what sucks is that in our area, we have like 2 weeks of March that every single day counts, mostly like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If any of those days is shitty out of the busy spring break weeks, you could lose 5 to 6% of your monthly revenue in just one day. So
yes,
it's like,
that happened.
yeah, it
That
did.
happened to me. We had our prices wrong on Saturday, and it was my fault. I typically catch it, but with a lot of the stuff we got going on, but we were down by for the month by literally that number. It was that
Mhm.
1 day number that we were. If we were down by 5%, it was because of that 1 day. Like it's just it's so wild how predicated upon um the days and the weather and the time of year that our businesses do. And this is like sort of the thing I go back to, right? Like, and I think it's just a tenor of the times that we live in,
Mhm.
where every like it's never nothing. It's not sexy to just be like a small business owner anymore, right? Like, say you're like, remember you like going to those places when you're a kid, like a roadside gas station or something, or you know, um, whatever it may be, like a little bookstore. Somebody's got that little small business and they pay their bills and they live and they're just like, it's like a job. But everything is scalable now, like, right? Like water sports was never really like this. Like it was always just one of those businesses where maybe you had like some kayak rentals by the water, or
Hmm.
you had a handful of jet skis. And I think that's just what it happened. I think the bigness of the world and all of the founder stories you hear, I think especially for younger entrepreneurs that it's like, I'm gonna start the Facebook of boat rentals. Like, no, you're probably not. Like it's probably not gonna happen because this business is notoriously difficult to A, operate, and B,
Yeah,
operate at scale. That's why you don't really see a national franchise for water sports. Like
you
maybe
don't. Yeah,
don't I mean you got Buzzy and Get Up and Go and Kai Capro with Tour Scale, but you talk to those guys and they're right, like they're just as dark eyed as the rest of them. That like there's no the whole business is so challenging from top to
yeah.
bottom because people have tried to scale it because there's so many operators in the business now, so many jet skis in the market, so many kayaks in the market. Nobody just has like a little lakeside stand with 10 kayaks. It's like,
Yeah, if you look at the big, like you took a Red Hospitality, right? They do 50 million a year. Notice where all of their locations are.
yeah,
They're at luxury resorts in warm climates where it's
yeah,
the year-round business. You and I had this conversation earlier about the seasonality of our industry and how frustrating it is. Every single year, we're having to get loans. We're having to, carry our crew and burn cash through the shoulder months or the off season, and it's frustrating every single year. But there's still money to be made in it. There's still you can make a really great career out of it and build
maybe,
wealth in it. Yeah.
maybe.
Well, I mean, if the one that I mean, the people that listen to this show, I think for the most part, they're doing well and they're making it. But I'm just saying, like, you make a really good point that scaling water sport businesses, and building multiple locations, it's challenging, and you're seeing very few companies do it right. And the ones that are doing it, you can kind of get where they are doing and how they're doing it, and it's not in middle income budget tourist destinations like Destin and Myrtle Beach and some of these places. They're doing it in these luxury destinations in the Caribbean and Hawaii.
But it's and also product focused too. So they're selling
Yeah.
tickets on very large boats. Like not to say that Red necessarily follows like the hornblower model, but as far
Mhm.
as selling tickets on a larger boat or a high dollar ticket, even better for a ticket on a curated tour or sightseeing expedition is, I'm not going to say it's necessarily easier or harder or more scalable or not, but when you're doing, say, versus boat rentals or jet ski rentals or parasail boat or commoditized dolphin tours on a small headboat. And when I say small headboat, I'm speaking to the 49 passenger Corinthians or
Mhm.
smaller, 20
Yeah.
passenger Trident, stuff like that. It becomes a lot more challenging when you have a $200 or $300 a ticket product on a vessel, and I mean an actual vessel like a Gold Coast yacht. You have experienced maritime captains and crew and branding and company culture and those type of things versus somebody who again is renting something via a lake or a local
Mhm.
mid market and commoditized, $39 whatever it may
Yeah.
be. So the business model is very different.
Yeah. And
It's two very different business models.
so we were having this conversation earlier, and I gotta kind of bring something up to you.
Yeah.
So you have a medium to large sized water sport business. with Destiny. And, you've had opportunities to acquire other companies and really grow the water sport business, take it to kind of another level, but you've decided to more horizontally expand by starting, the boaters test. You started, the Jeep rentals, but you didn't go further in. And not that yet, I think you didn't want to, just because you saw maybe some other opportunities elsewhere. But do you think that's kind of a better play for water sport operators instead of being the biggest water sport operator and scaling? Maybe look at other opportunities to service the water sport industry or find other similar industries. Because I mean, I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I just thought that was kind of interesting. Because you could have got a head boat, you could have went into parasailing, but you didn't.
Yeah, and the reason being is because of the obstacles that I mentioned. So if you look at, let's say, Sunset Water Sports down in Key West, or even Fury Water Adventures, those businesses are closer to the Hawaii market, where and again, you start to see the expansion down there is going more in that direction of sandbar trips, large head vessels that can accommodate to 100 and 120 passengers, charging per person, rather than, oh, we're going to do 50 boat rentals, or it's market and product specific in the water sport niche. So what I did not want to do was be further constrained by all of the barriers to entry and operational hazards that come with having the same product and in the same vertical, even in a different market. Because if there's maybe it's a regulatory measure, or another insurance hiccup, or a supply chain issue, or loans are particularly hard to get at high interest rates, all things we've experienced in the last 3 years, it now ripples across every single business.
Yeah.
Now you're struggling to stay up to state regulatory measures, or needing insurance. Like it's the moat that you build, I think, around your businesses, and why private equities have portfolios, is because they want to create it's just a piece of the puzzle, right? So if that whole chain gets destroyed because of one piece of the puzzle breaks, I don't want my portfolio of businesses, so to speak. And I use that term like really loosely because I just have like a handful of small businesses that I run, but still, if one thing breaks on the main hustle, like, again, it's like, so when we talked about, I asked Greg about what errors and omission insurance was, right? Like, it's a cheap insurance that you have if you're running like a product, like office, whatever it may be. I didn't look deep into it, other than the fact that it asked a question of, is your largest client represent larger than, I think it was 15% of your overall business? And I think from an asset liability perspective, if you're looking at an entire portfolio, or the breadth of everything that you do, you don't want to have one thing be the soul of your business. Like, if this one piece breaks, yeah, it might hurt, it might suck for a year, but you have growth potential, you have the ability to lean on these other businesses. And it's again why water sport companies are diversified. When you look at large water sport companies, as something as big as Red, down to like Gilligan's, right? So Gilligan's got parasailing, boat rentals, jet skis. Like, none of us just solely subsist on boat rentals. None of us solely subsist on jet skis. Well, some of us do, but if any of these problems that are in the industry come to fruition, especially on the insurance side, your business is over. You're like, it's like, I don't even know who I was talking to, but I was like, sometimes I feel like I'm in a town in Pittsburgh, and I work at a factory, and I'm like worried that, like the factory industry or the steel industry takes a hit or something like this, they're going to shut the factory down. And that's sort of like what.
Here's a question for like our listeners. So
sure.
At what point in your career or I should say the tenure of you owning your business, should you diversify and start something different to kind of like offset the potential of there being issues? Or like, because like I respect people who like run just a boat rental business, nothing else, just boats, because they can focus primarily on that one activity, understand all the nuances and the compliance, and they're not, you know, burdened by any other thing. But at the same time, like with SB 606 in Florida, with all these regulations, now I think some people are like, you know, this is actually a lot more challenging than I thought, and it's getting a lot more difficult to run. What else is out there? Like, at what point do you have to start looking at, you know, opening up a Jeep rental business or bounce house or whatever you're doing? Like, what's that? Or is it more just an entrepreneurial thing?
So much like I don't really call myself CEO or founder, I also like to get the names of my businesses, industries that I'm involved in at least correct. So I prefer to say like car rental business and event rental business. I don't like overplay myself with the CEO founder, but I'm also, hey, oh my God, I I gotta show you something. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Oh,
Hold on. Give me
okay.
1 second.
Oh God, what do you have? What do you have?
This is like the coolest thing happening in my this is the coolest thing. This is the coolest thing happening in my life right now. You ready?
Okay,
My new license plate coming.
Big Kev. Oh God.
Because it's big, it's Big Kev's Big Top Bounce is the actual name of the bounce house rental
Yeah, yeah.
business. Yeah, so yeah, for those of you who can't see, I got a personalized license plate for my truck. So I'm pretty excited about that. Pretty big things going on in my life. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
You know, the question is like, at what point as a business owner do you look at diversifying and starting other things? I mean, is it strictly a financial thing? Is it more of just like, well, I need something to kind of, um,
I think
you
that
know,
when you're renting a property with a 1 year lease, and I think when you have capital expenditure that has to go out in perpetuity every year, when insurance costs continue to rise, I think you have to look at the the entire environment in which you run your business. I can tell
mm,
you how many city and county council meetings I've been to for everything else I've done. Zero. I can tell you how many times I've been like, oh, what is the one piece what is the one rug they could pull out from underneath me that would ostensibly end me? Well, like, let me put it back to you. Who is the monster in your arena that, like,
mhm.
what's the one thing that could happen to your business that would decimate you or make you completely unprofitable?
Yeah. Well,
I
that's
think I know what
Google.
it is. Yeah. Yep.
So, and I'll tell you right now, like we didn't start new businesses. Well, I take it back. Um, we started WaveRes more so to solve a problem, but to prop up our existing business of TripShock, because I saw all these res techs. I saw what they were doing with their own distribution networks, and I figured, like, you know, we have to do something to make sure that this business survives. You know, this business survives and thrives and makes it to that next decade. So, I mean, I think a lot of times with our water sport companies is that we don't start other companies just because we want to make more money, but to ensure the longevity of our existing. And like to this day, WaveRes is a really good standalone company that's growing, but it really supports TripShock, and it needs it. They feed off each other in a lot of ways. And I think like you probably are going to see that with your boaters test and the other business that you're starting. But I mean, I think that when you're starting another company, really important to look at this other company as a way to, how can this company benefit the current thing I'm building, and how can it protect it? I guess that's what I was getting at. It's like that second business is there to protect it. WaveRes is protecting TripShock in a lot of ways, and vice versa.
I feel like when you started getting into multiple different hustles, I think it's a growth thing. Yeah. And I probably think that a lot of entrepreneurs suffer from this. I don't know one guy that just has one thing. Like, I can't think of every single one of my peers and friends in this business. Now, that might be a little different to the franchise guys that are in this industry, but still, a tour scale, same. They're like, oh, we're not just doing trolleys, we're doing pubs, we're doing tikis, we're doing headboats. Maybe Justin. I think Justin is probably.
Well, we have John Stevens coming on the show next week, and he's done boat rentals for 15 years. Boat ski rentals, done the same thing. He hasn't really veered, because we'll have to pose that question to him of why he hasn't got into other things. I mean, he's done a lot with, the government and the nonprofit stuff, but man, that guy hasn't started multiple business when he probably had the opportunity to. So.
Yeah.
Anyways, side note.
But all right. So, but to that point, right? The restlessness of him, and he is a handful of guys that have that calling to civic duty, that want to be involved. Like, if you have, like, when we do all have time, you have time to spin up other businesses, you have the bandwidth to do other things. I think for guys like him, and then Deputy Mayor Nick Algretto, he owns a business, and all of those guys that sit up on those councils, for the most part, are business owners. A lot of them who are involved in city council and government are business owners. And to a degree, I think also that is born out of and for John, I would probably guess specifically, to your point, it was born out of a need to protect his business. Like, he was like, man, I'm so sick of moratoriums and presenting and falling on deaf ears. So, and I think a lot of guys get into the government side probably for that very reason. I wouldn't say I've considered it, but I have thought about it. I've been like, man, I would just, I'm not partial enough, because I would just be like, man, fuck you, man. You know what I mean?
Thinking, and so, this kind of thought of starting another business to protect your core business, I would say in your situation, Kevin, like, you started the other businesses because you have, an off season with Destiny Water Adventures, and you wanted to protect your employees, give them work, 100%. Give them jobs. And I feel this kind of the same way, because the businesses that I started, my developers, I don't have enough development work on just one of my sites, but having I have a security business too, and the ability to use those staff and spread it around, make sure people are working and have enough hours. I can't do that, and they all kind of funnel back to TripShock, which is our core business. So, what I think we're hearing a lot is like starting other businesses in a lot of ways protect your core business, because you have an off season, you have cash burn, you're trying to figure out how to, better manage all of that. And sometimes there's some tax benefits of even starting a second business in a lot of ways. So, yeah.
Let me ask you this. So why did you pull back from at one point, it seemed as though you were trying to be an OTA in a bunch of different verticals in a bunch of different markets. What happened with that?
So when we looked at our bookings, we realized that 90+% of them were water experiences in certain markets. So it really didn't make any sense. I mean, you got to think, anytime we sign up a new company, even though it's free to sign up for an OTA, it's not free from the workload that it takes for our team to build your products out and to communicate. It costs around $500 per new supplier, sometimes even more if they have a lot of products. So if I'm signing up more and more product that we know we're not going to book a lot of, then it's just a loss leader on our end. So instead, I would preferably have less suppliers and then hopefully have more of those less suppliers use WaveRes. So I build them up and so they're using both ends on the supply and the demand side. And then I can use less staff and less people to be more profitable with the few clients that, or not, I wouldn't say few because we have over 400 on Trip Shock now, but just have, less people I need to manage by being more profitable per supplier.
Were certain markets just like impossible for you to just break in as an OTA where the cost of Google just didn't make any sense because you had
I'll tell you right now,
Fair Harbor in there? Or...
And that's not necessarily the Fair Harbor situation.
Not Fair Harbor, but
Viator,
Viator, not TripAdvisor.
I'm going to say right now that I'll be really surprised if any of those OTAs in a lot of markets are even making any money on Google Ads. I think it's all a lost lead for them because they are just looking for top line so they can IPO. Because I'll tell you right now, I've been doing this for 15 years and the margins are really slim and we do it really well. We don't have near the cost that they do in some regards, like development, stuff like that. But to get bookings for water sports, it's costing a lot more than I think that they're making because I just said know the margins, but they don't care because Get Your Guide raised a few $100 million. Viator has a war chest. They'll never run out of money for Google. They're just paying them billions. But again, like companies are valued differently. Some companies are valued based on their gross volume or GMV, they call it. Not so much on profitability. That's why you look in their P&Ls, they're not profitable. Or if they are profitable, they're barely profitable. They're trying just to make as much money as possible because it looks better in the event they IPO or they sell. And then whoever buys them, they can, optimize it and get rid of people and maybe get rid of some markets and find what's really profitable and just run with it. I mean, if I wanted to make Trip Shock really profitable tomorrow, I could trim down on our ad spend. I can let go some staff and, make a lot more money, but that doesn't help out my valuation. So the suppliers, in a lot of ways, they benefit from OTAs in a big way because the OTAs might not be making any money, but they're doing all the marketing on the front end for you. So if you're in a good position where you're in a competitive market and they're bringing you a lot of money, like the OTAs might not be making anything on the Google ad spend.
So let's switch gears. So I had an interesting conversation right before we started recording with Patrick Coughlin, who was asking me about the FHDN and Fair Harbor Connect, and there possibly being like an idea that they're going to start passing down a percentage. Can you speak to that? You think they're like
passing down a percentage as in what?
Like charging a percentage to the supplier for connection with their OTAs.
I have not heard that, but I know other res tech do charge a percentage to accept OTA bookings.
Yeah, he was doing something with Fair. Patrick's an interesting guy. He's like, I don't know if you've been reading these emails from Fair Harbor. I was like, I don't read emails from Fair Harbor. I don't read emails from Viator. If something,
I was told that the Fair Harbor CEO listens to the show. So,
okay, well,
maybe we need to address that question directly with him.
abandoned cart remarketing. We're gonna need. I'm not one of those guys who worry about OTAs and reservation technology until I start to see it affecting our bottom line adversely. If you want to get me to move reservation technology, then I got to either see like something really great in the marketplace or somebody's got to screw up somewhere along the line where it's like, oh, this is going to cost you more money. But I think go ahead.
Let me ask you this. So, right now, some res techs, they charge a few points to accept OTA bookings. Like I know Peak does for certain OTAs. I know Resd does. A couple of them do. And I know someone has been telling me that that's going to be a trend. Fair Harbor doesn't at this point. They don't charge a percentage. Wavereds doesn't charge a percentage on OTA bookings. But if Fair Harbor did start charging you 2, 3, 4% to accept bookings from Viator, TripShock, or wherever, how would that affect your decision on who you work with?
Man, ultimately, Greg, and I'm gonna rant a little bit.
Go ahead.
Rant.
Ran away.
The main reason I got in business because like ultimately you just see this sort of you see this pattern, right? Kind of develop, right? Look at the level of inflation, consumer spending, inflation went up like 3.5% last year. CPI went up like another whatever, and it's somebody who's in their late 20s, early 30s, like cannot afford to buy a house in this market.
Yeah.
Everything is just like, and it takes me back to my initial point about the small business guy sitting by the lake. Like we're no different than a guy who's got a regular job, who's making ends meet. Good luck paying for your kids' college tuition in this environment because wages aren't keeping up with inflation. And I saw this a long time ago where I was like, I've never been one that's been super driven and motivated by money. I've never been like, oh, I need a Lamborghini and I need $1 billion. But I did see the writing on the wall before I started desking, and I just felt like that everything, the world and all of these companies, the Vanguard and the BlackRocks and the State Streets who own these massive REITs that are buying up real estate, driving the price through the roof and can pay cash because they have all of it. I feel like I'm in the same position when I was like, if you work a 40-hour-a-week job, you don't own a business, and you're like, man, times are tough out here. It's no different for a small business, whether it be OTAs going, we want to take a couple more points, or insurance going, we're going to leave this market because it's tough. Everybody wants a cut of your business, and the margins just keep on getting smaller and smaller. The government and the system, the way it currently is no more favorable to small business than they are just a working class, middle class American. And we have it. It's just as hard. So the struggle then becomes, how do I make more money? How do I build more? How do I subvert the cash burn that we go through in the office?
So what's the answer to this long-winded question I asked you about if they raise your percentage for OTA bookings?
I don't know.
You don't know?
It's hard. Well, it's hard. It's not for me. Like, I'm just going to go tell them to kick rocks. But it comes.
And you can't. But the thing is, you can't. Like, here's the thing. Like, my credit card processor, you can. But like, my credit card processor raised our rates right before spring break. I can't just, like, our payment software is integrated. There's development required. I can't just switch. You know,
you can definitely switch ResTax, no problem.
But I mean, the middle of the season, it's not as simple.
Not the middle of season, but this is a long game. But listen, the reason about that rant is this is what did Ian call it about the county and the government? That's like a death by 1,000 cuts, right? Oh, it's just it's one more point on your payment processing. Oh, it's just 2 more points on OTA bookings. Oh, it's just 13% of your gross revenue for insurance. Oh, we're just raising rent, but like eventually you have to draw a line in the sand. And for the ResTech, Fair Harbor, Peak Pro, whatever it may be, if you're going to raise prices, then you better damn sure make sure you're bringing extra added value, whether it be perceived or real. Because ultimately, everyone complained about dynamic pricing, and that never seemed to really pull off or happen anything. Now it's abandoned cart remarketing. I don't know what it is, but at some point you have to drive more value. If you're going to continue to ask for more money, it's the same thing. If my customers come back year over year and my prices keep on getting more expensive, but I'm not differentiating myself from my competition and I'm not providing more value for the increased price, then it doesn't matter. And that whole rant is just to say, that it gets to a point where the margins become too thin for to deal with the headache, to deal with the heartache,
Yeah.
to be in a constant state of fight or flight in the off season because you're burning through cash, that the long nights, the no days of seeing your family, the constant push and struggle to not come out ahead, and you can't even afford to go buy a house because interest rates are, you see what I'm saying? Like, I think
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a symptom of something larger that's happening in our society, which goes to say that we are being platformed. We're being platformed by technology. We're being platformed by massive companies, and we're being
Mhm.
platformed by the fucking U.S. government.
And
And
Kevin, I want to just say, you make a good point. And even when like this year came, we knew things were going to be tough.
yeah,
We knew that this year with our employees, they're seeing increased costs. Personally, they want raises. We're not seeing the numbers increase year over year. We're seeing credit card process. Everything has increased across the board. We're trying to, and then like we can't just pass on the cost to our partners. They're facing their own problems, and to say, okay, you're going to solve like our financial issues, our clients and our suppliers. That's a really shitty way of dealing with the problems in our economy right now. Is just to push it off to your clients, and I think most big companies are doing that. When I asked my processor, I said, hey, we're not expecting a really strong year. Is there any way that we can negotiate this? There was not even an option to do that. And it was really, it's really messed up that, I know that this company is making, millions of dollars in profit. I mean, it's unless there's something that they're just not, sharing, but it's still like they're going to pass on their increase in costs to us instead of trying to figure out ways to add more value or doing something to kind of make it feel better. But no, we're just going to slam it onto you. And I'm not going to do that. I mean, I'm going to find ways, at my companies to either cut cost in order to keep prices the same and not increase commissions or anything, because we're all in this together. I think that's like what bigger companies don't realize is that they're just looking out for their bottom line and not actually looking out for the betterment of their community. So,
yeah, well, we're a rare breed, man.
yeah,
It's funny because as you were talking about that, I'm thinking about like, yeah, we have all these businesses. We're just like we're just basically a guy who's got 4 different jobs, working 90 hours a week to make ends meet, man. Like we're all of us guys that are entrepreneurial or serial entrepreneurs. I basically just I work at Publix at night. I drive an Uber on the weekends, and my 40-hour-a-week job, slanging a hammer or a wrench or whatever it is, just
mm,
like isn't enough to cut it. And it's not just about protecting your business, but it's trying to grow something, and it's very difficult and I think to this point, it's not just water sports, right? Like
yeah,
it's any and all businesses, small businesses right now that are in a hostile lending environment where assets, even used assets, are really expensive still from COVID because the book value, like the people were paying such ungodly prices for everything, and now you can go buy a new car for cheaper than you can use. You can buy a new boat for cheaper than you can use because of the way the interest rates were structured just a couple of years ago, but the prices were insanely high. Now the prices are still insanely high, but the interest rates are as well. So
you noticed
it's
something on our Facebook group, and if you haven't already joined our Facebook group, Water Sport and Boat Tour Operators, just search for it on Facebook, you'll find it. But anytime that someone posts a boat for sale or a tour boat for sale, notice how many comments and likes it gets because there just isn't a lot of new boats for sale. I mean, in the lead time to get a new boat built is, it takes time. So, I mean, it's just surprising that I just saw like the demand for used boats is pretty high all over right now because of just what you said. But anyways,
yeah.
yeah, we're definitely getting the time here, and we thank y'all for joining us for another exciting conversation. And we will have some news about the Watersport Forum in the next couple weeks, some dates. It's going to be in October, and we look forward to having you.
Yeah, man. Oh, it was another fun trip around the potosphere with you, my friend. Guys, thank you all so much for listening. And always keep it awkward.
Keep it awkward.